Hi, I'm Nettie and this is Andy from the Hollow Project. We've been sent in over the last few months lots of questions about the Hollow Project, so we thought the easiest way was to write down the questions and see if we can answer them. So often the questions overlap, so we thought if we do it this way then everyone can get the answers. If you've got questions that aren't answered, please feel free to put them in the comments on our Facebook or send them via email to us and we will do our best to answer them for you. All right, let's go. What is a hollow? Okay, a hollow is a home inside a tree that an animal lives in. So often they have a small entrance, and if you went inside the entrance, you actually see inside the trunk a larger volume within the tree. In the Hollow Project, a hollow refers to the artificial hollow that we've designed and drilled to naturally mimic a natural hollow.
Yes.
Yes.
Am I answering next? Okay, next question. Why are hollows important? Okay, in Australia, they're particularly important. There's at least 300 Aussie species that use hollows for nesting in, for denning in, for growing their babies, for sheltering from the weather, for protection. So, yeah, that's a lot of animals. And we've been losing a lot of hollows over the last couple of hundred years. Essentially, the older growth trees, the big trees that had the most hollows in them, have kind of been reduced through, habitat destruction. So pretty much, some of our farming practices, logging, development, they're kind of all reasons why we've lost a lot of trees, the bigger trees that have hollows in them.
Okay. How long does it take for a hollow to form naturally? When I was told this, I was pretty surprised actually, because it takes around 100 years for a small hollow to form in a tree. And for a larger hollow, for larger animals, it can take 200 to 300 years, isn't it?
Especially in your highly durable Aussie trees. They just they take a long time to break down.
Yeah, so therefore old growth forest compared to young growth forest, there's such a difference in what can actually live within that forest. It makes it important really to make sure we do keep our old growth forest.
How do natural hollows form? Okay, so most hollows are naturally formed in the bush, essentially by damage. So it's generally storm damage or lightning strike, something like that, or it's actually from a tree self-pruning limbs, where essentially a branch is broken or it's snapped off at the trunk, or it's basically a damaged branch, and typically the moisture builds up in that damaged component. So there's moisture building up, you get that kind of microbial activity, little insects eat away, and it starts to decompose. The sort of fibres of the timber break down, and that's enough to let more water in. And that process can continue, and if the tree doesn't heal over that wound in time, that entrance can be maintained, and so you can continue getting that water growing in, and you might get termites come into it. You get that further breakdown over time, and it gradually, that hollow widens. So it's a slow process. Like, yeah, as I said, Aussie trees are highly durable, some of the most naturally durable trees in the world, and so that's why they take so long. Especially the big hollows, they can take 100 years because that timber's just so hard to break down.
Very cool. Okay. What was the reason for doing the trial? I'm going to answer this, but he should be because it's his idea. But anyway, I'm going to go for it. Hollows, as Andy mentioned just before, are super important. And we have 2 blocks of land here. One of them has oldish growth, so probably about 150 years.
At least that.
At least that, 150 to 200 years. And then in the front section, we have a smaller block, 25 acres, which has younger growth. So 60 years ago, it was farmed. So we know the trees on it are around 50 to 60 years old. And the biggest thing we noticed between the two blocks of land was the amount of hollows on there, and in turn, the amount of animals were there that weren't there or were there in the older forest. So our aim was to actually see if we could put hollows into trees around here and to see whether the animals would then, sort of migrate and breed. We've got enough food in this area. Like the young forest has enough, food life for them, just hasn't got the housing. And I think the other thing that you really wanted to do was to work out, hollows are fairly new. They're in their infancy. About
or drilled hollows.
Drilled hollows, about 7 years to maybe 9 years at the most. But there's definitely not enough research done on uptake, but also on like how the tree actually grows back, or does it resist it. Also the size of hollows and shape of hollows, what will work, what won't. So, and orientation, like the list goes on. I think we'll get into that.
There's lots and lots of scientific data that needs to be worked out about hollows still, about the drilled hollows, the artificial hollows.
Yeah, so I think
it's a very new field of research.
Andy thought, hey, that's somewhere I can contribute. I've got the skill set to do it. So the trial started, and it's grown a lot bigger because the uptake was so good from the start. So, and we realised that there was so much more we could help answer. So then the Hollow Project became a thing.
Okay, does it harm the tree? I've been asked this one a few times actually, and the answer, as far as we know, it's very, very little harm gets done to the tree. You're essentially putting a 50 millimetre entrance through the skin of the tree. So the living skin of the tree is on the outside. It's in the cambium layer. That's all the nutrients get fed up and through to feed the tree. And so you're really just putting a small penetration through that living layer into the dead timber, which is inside the tree. So that all that timber, mostly inside the tree, that we're carving out to create the hollow is dead tissue. So it's not affecting the living layer. We are, by drilling a cavity inside the tree, you are creating a weak point that has a potential increased risk for structural collapse, I suppose. So we're quite judicious with the way, I was quite careful with the way I put them into the hollows. I didn't sort of drill them on a branch leaning over like that, and I definitely didn't put it near our buildings because, it's still an unknown factor. Matt, who has invented the hollow hog tool that creates these hollows, has done thousands of hollows, and he's only had like 1 or 2 trees have failures. So no, it really doesn't harm the tree. There's, I suppose, a small potential risk of you can get infections in the tree, but again, that's part of the trial. Is we're testing 40 trees here. There's other people doing other work, and I think the results are showing that there's very little impact on the trees. There's been none here on our property so far.
All right. How high up are the hollows? Okay, so for the trial, we chose between 3 and 5 metres to do the hollows. Now, that wasn't just a random number. Andy consulted with Dr. Ross Goldengay, who is like one of the leading Australian researchers in habitat restoration, really.
Nest boxes.
Nest boxes and things like that. And we needed a level that was capable of Andy doing that on a ladder that was safe. But that also the next thing was, how low down can you come that the animal is going to be happy to use it? So in Ross's experience, he was saying that, he's seen animals go down, was it 2?
Sugar gliders, like a metre and a half off the ground, we're nesting in a tree.
Yeah, and locally we've got like parrots in about a 2 metre height, hollow. So it was decided that 3 to 5 metres was enough that the animals would visit them, would do it. But also it's part of the trial. Like, are they better at a 5 metre than a 3 metre? Like, there's lots of things there.
It was important to try and make it, or to try and test whether the hollows could be successful without the use of an arborist and climbing gear. So I wanted to try and make sure, or try and test whether we could make it accessible for anyone other than tree climbing specialist to be able to put hollows in. So it was quite important to try and make it that, yeah, it's high off a ladder, but if it is taken up by the animals, then that height might be appropriate.
And those that are watching, that's Benji that Andy just had on his knee there. And he, for some reason, he hasn't been wanting to hang around all day, but as soon as we start videoing, he decides he wants to be part of it. So.
Okay, how many trees are in the Hollow project? So on the 25-acre property, we surveyed 70 trees to begin with, that of 3 particular species. So I didn't select any of the paper barks because they don't sort of naturally form hollows as readily as some of the eucalypts. So I concentrated on the swamp mahoganies, the Eucalyptus terraticornis, which is a red gum, forest red gum, and we've got a hybrid up here. So I focused on those trees, and they had to have a large enough diameter to cater for a hollow. And out of those 70, after working out species ranges and positioning and differences in orientation, all that sort of stuff, we picked 40 trees. So 40 trees throughout the property have actually had a hollow installed on them. Which
makes it a fairly unique project, really, to be researching and monitoring 40 trees on 25 acres, especially because we're using video, so we can see a lot of behavioural data and stuff like that.
And that's all at the same time. So they're all getting monitored. So every night we're getting a picture of what's happening across those 40 trees across the 25 acres. So that's quite unique.
Yeah. Okay, what species are you targeting? Well, this is my favourite question because I've been monitoring for the first 3 months trial all these animals, so I've kind of fallen in love with them. Andy did 5 different designs, and of them, one of them was designed for a feather-tail glider. And I have this habit of calling them feather gliders. So, you know, that's my new nickname for them. If you hear me at all during the whole thing talk about feather gliders, that means feather-tail gliders. We've got the sugar or squirrel gliders. We've put them into the one category. Bats, tree creepers, and then small parrots.
So tree creepers are a small bird that makes its nest in hollows. Just for those who are a bit unsure what a tree creeper is, it sounds a bit crazy.
Yeah. I'll try and put pictures up as well so people can see what they look like. Yeah. Now, the next questions are actually ones that I've just put aside because they're actually about how the hollow was made, and as I didn't make any, I didn't really feel that I should answer any of those questions. Andy did the hard work. He actually made them, I think it was around September. Last year. And it was hot, and we sent him out in the bush, and he would come back in between each hollow, really sweaty, covered in sawdust, looking like a sawdust lamington. So I really feel like he did that hard work, and he deserves to answer these questions.
Great.
So, yeah.
Okay, so what tool do you use to make the hollows? So the tool was a really clever invention by Matt Stevens. It's called the Hollow Hog. And I actually used, part of the trial was to test this tool, but it was also to test lots of other tools that and drill bits and so forth, because with my kind of past building and architecture experience, I thought, it'd be great to compare Matt's invention versus sort of some other techniques I'd come up with. But yeah, the Hollow Hog turned out to be probably the most appropriate tool for the purpose, and it's essentially like a big router piece that on a extended shaft that attaches to an angle grinder. So yeah, that was it's a really clever tool, and it does a great job. So I'll probably explain more on that in more Q&A, but it's a great device, and it did a really good job making the hollows.
All right.
Oh, I've got more.
You've got more.
Keep going. How long does it take to carve a hollow? So I was a bit slow at first, and it took a lot longer to kind of get into the swing of things. But once I got my technique worked out, I was kind of typically, and depending on the size of the hollow, sort of between 1 and 4 hours, like 1 to 2 hours to actually drill the hollow. But by the time you get all your stuff set up, and you lug it through the bush. And this block here is particularly thick. We've got a lot of heavy undergrowth. So the sort of lugging the gear from spot to spot through the bush, and then putting the ladder up in the tree, making sure everything's secure, getting all your stuff up the tree, and actual getting prepared, it probably puts it out to maybe 3 or 4 hours to do a hollow.
Do you remember how many the most you was in a day, or what you were doing on average?
Yeah. My best day, I had 2 really good days where I got 5 hollows done, 5 sort of small to mid-sized hollows done in like an 11-hour day. I think I did that 2 days in a row. So yeah, but you know, it might have been 3 hollows a day before that. But
I know near the end he was counting.
I was counting them down. Those last 10 hollows were like, oh, I was ready.
Hard work.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, that's you again.
What size are the hollows? Okay, so I kind of developed a method of working out the volume of the hollows. Like you sort of see recommendations about a hollow should be so many centimetres by so many centimetres by so many centimetres. But it's a really difficult way of measuring accurately the internal dimensions of a hollow through a tiny little opening. So I kind of went with the method of measuring volume by actually pouring liquid into the tree and then siphoning it out and measuring what went in there. So I measured them by litres, and generally the hollow size we were targeting were fairly small hollows in the scheme of things, and they started at about 1 litre, so you know, a 1 litre milk bottle, up to about 4 litre hollow, even 4.2 I think we got up to. So you know, 2 or 3 or 2 big 2 litre milk bottles put side by side, and the entrance size varied from sort of 25 mil up to 70 mil, so 1 inch to 3 inches.
All right, I think you've got one more of those.
Keep going.
Yeah.
How important is the entrance size? The entrance size is quite critical actually to what species you're targeting. There's very significant niches in entrance size for each animal species. So each species has their own little niche of entrance size that they like to get into that other animals can't get into. So it's quite interesting to see how tight a gap the critters will actually squeeze into, and if it's really, really tight and they can get into it, that's almost the perfect size for them. So
I was really surprised how little they are. Like some of the hollows, like 25 mil, like I'm like, nothing's going to fit in that. Like, but you'd be surprised. And even some of the hollows that are made for a bigger creature, so a smaller creature, but the bigger creatures. Like we've got a video of one glider trying to pop its head into a smaller one and push its body, and then it pops its head out again. And then when you go back, it's actually scratching at the hollow to try and get in. So they are often trying to expand it or get into, like they'll get in the smallest, narrowest hollow they can, you know.
So sort of the microbat size, I mean, we probably did larger than what was needed, but microbats can get into like 10 millimetre hollow cracks and entrances. The feathertail glider, we were aiming for about a 25 millimetre entrance. The sugar and squirrel gliders were, you know, sort of between 38 and 50 millimetres, so tiny little openings. We did some larger ones of 70 millimetres, which were sort of for your small to mid-sized parrots. And then you can, like obviously the large animals like your brush-tailed possums, they need bigger than that. They need like 100 millimetres. Your powerful owls, greater gliders, they're a lot bigger again. So, you know, as the entrance size goes up, and the volume goes up, your sort of hierarchy of animals go into that. So it's very specific.
And I suppose that in our 60-year-old forest, it limits you to how big the volume can, obviously, because your tree trunks are only so big.
Yeah.
So, you know, even though we do have some 56-year-old forests around, that doesn't mean that we can drill hollows big enough to go into every, like for every creature.
Yeah, we don't have trees big enough here for, say, a powerful owl on this property, which needs a, you know, metre size hollow that's large enough to take its whole body. So, so that's where, you know, by seeding the trees with the hollows we're doing here, maybe as they grow over the next bunch of years, next 30, 40, 50 years, those hollows will grow with them. So we'll get a greater succession in animals living on the property.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Okay. We might make this the last one. This is an interesting question, actually, because I think we should do a whole little series on this. This is, do the hollows fill with water when it rains? And it's an interesting question because we were really worried about this at the start. One of the design decisions that we made was that we would mimic natural hollows as much as possible. And a lot of other hollows that have been put out there have actually been facing either, straight or even down.
They'll have their entrances protected to stop water coming into them.
Yeah, so where you've got a branch that would normally break off and you've got it facing up, we've then said, okay, then that should face up. But then just before we're doing them, this is a lot of work to do these hollows, and it's like, what if they all fill with water? And then the trial's useless. So anyway, we decided to stick to it, and Andy did great designs in Drake Hollows, and as we know, he spent ages in the bush becoming in Lamington. And then we put them out there, and we did find that I think within the first trial, 5 of them flooded, and it was amazing. It was just one of the best trees, the best footage, because what we realised, and one of the ecologists just before we started said, actually, you do need water up in trees. You might just create a swimming pool. So we used to sort of laugh about, okay, out of the 40 trees, we might end up with a swimming pool. That'd be cool for the real estate agent to be able to sell these homes. But it was true. So these became drinking stations. They were one of the most visited tree hollows out of all of them. And I mean, we had a lot of visitations on everything, so it was successful in the first 3 months. But they would come down and drink, like feathertail gliders, sugar gliders, squirrel gliders. What are the wasps called?
Potter wasps.
Potter wasps. We've seen so many potter wasps on the video, but anyway.
They use the moisture to kind of build their mud nests and things like that.
Yeah, and they'd come in and take water, and the feathertail gliders actually need to stay wet. So in the heat, they would go in and bathe in there. You'd see them like go into the hollow, dip around and come out wet. And other times they'd just come down and they'd drink, and you'd watch their little belly filling up, like they'd, sitting there. Same with the sugar gliders and the squirrel gliders, they would come down and drink and even swim in them and cool their bodies down. We did the first trial over summer, so we were thinking, is this going to happen over winter? But we've had a couple of trial cameras out on the hollows while we were waiting to get the funding for the rest of the cameras, and we made sure we left it on one of the water hollows, and it's been used all year. Like, there's barely a night that someone isn't drinking from it. So it's been a real success, really. The only one that once it fills with water, that we tend not to see is the antechinus. So a lot of our hollows, one of the first creatures that came to them were feathertail gliders.
I think primarily they're getting their moisture from the ground, whereas those arboreal mammals don't like to come down to drink. So to have a swimming pool or a water fountain halfway up a tree where they don't actually have to come down for risk of predators is, that's really.
And I think that really demonstrated it when we lost the antechinus, because they're happy to go on the ground. They're fine with that, whereas the other ones aren't. So to watch this happen, and now we've ended up with, a bunch of water hollows, and all with different entrance sizes. So Andy's working out now why they fill with water compared to this one, and what you can do to actually design a hollow for that purpose of having water, and then design one hopefully not to have water. But I think there's too much to say to...
Yeah, there's a lot in that, but it's been a really interesting finding. And it's been one of the criticisms, I think, of drilled hollows is, they flood. But I think it's really important that moisture in the hollow is a natural part. Like, it's a natural part of hollow growth. So to try and exclude it fully, I think, is potentially a problem. So it's working out how can we kind of how can we develop the right technique to enable moisture to get in there so that the hollow can still grow, but the animals can still use it. So, and that's one of the really cool things about the trials. We've learnt a lot already. We've got some more things to analyse, I think. But
so much more.
Yeah, but that's something that's new, actually opening up the hollows that direction.
But
So,
also just even on the, it'd be interesting to know with the water hollows, or flooded hollows, I think they're called, whether the growth is different on them than it is on one that hasn't flooded, but also the volume inside, like does it rot out quicker, and then does it therefore form a larger hollow at a faster pace than what a non-flooded hollow is. I think it's for us now over the next 10 years of monitoring these is some of those questions we'll be able to answer. We're designing new techniques to actually measure the volumes and things like that to make it easier as well. So there's a lot going on. We're excited about it. If we haven't answered your questions, there is a bunch of other questions that we've got, but we thought we'd start with a few. Please send them through because we're more than happy to answer them. Part of this is to educate, to share, and then also to get feedback from others that are doing, similar projects or have got ideas and stuff like that. We're very open to listening to them.
Yeah. Yay for hollows.
So thank you everyone for listening, and we will hopefully I'll be putting lots more videos up for you. When getting near the end, we have around $5,000 more to raise, which in the scheme of things isn't as much. So if you would like to donate so that we end up with 40 cameras on all of the trees, please do so on our GoFundMe. But we've actually had people email us directly saying that they don't want to do GoFundMe. Can they just come and see us? So yes, if you're wanting to donate but prefer not to do it online, please contact us. If you're a business that is looking for a charity that's really good for the environment and for the community and for the locals, then also we would happily talk to you. But send in your questions and watch this space for the Hollow Project.
Thank you.